I'm calling the Parks and Rec Advisory Board meeting to order Tuesday, September 28th, 2021. Attendance and roll call. Jason is excused. My name is Vito Iacobazzi, the Vice Chair, and I will lead the meeting tonight. Sylvia Allen is here. Alan Billingsley is here. Michael Acady is here, and Fred Reamy is here. Do I have approval of the July 27th, 2021 minutes? All in favor? Aye. Approved. Minutes are approved. I've got some text I'd like to share with everyone right now. Is there public comment? Is there any public comment other than what we're going to hear later on? So please announce members of the audience may comment on items related to any matter related to the Parks and Rec Advisory Board business under the public comments period. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per person. Please announce that there is a public hearing this evening regarding the renaming of Fort Steilacoom Park. Those who would like to speak on that topic should wait until the public hearing portion of that agenda item. Virtual comments. If you would like to provide live virtual public comments, you will need to join the Zoom meeting as an attendee by calling by the telephone number dial 1-253-215-8782 and enter the meeting ID number 920-3804-6123 or visit the zoom.us and enter the meeting ID number, which is the same that I just read off. Upon entering the meeting, please enter your name or other chosen identifier. Use the raise hand feature to be called upon. When you are unmuted, please provide your name, city of residence, and each speaker will be allowed 3 minutes to speak. All attendees on Zoom will continue to have the ability to virtually raise your hand for the duration of the meeting. You will not be acknowledged, and your microphone will remain muted except for when you are called upon. Please call the sheet. Now, is there anybody here for public comment other than, and there is no one. So I'm going to move on to new business. And under new business, the city name facility, Dave Boyd. And I'd like to call Mary Dodsworth, the Director of Parks, to share staff report regarding this topic.
Naming a city facility, Parker facility. This board did review this process earlier this year when the council had asked us to create a review process to go with an application. So back in 2016, the city council passed a resolution, and it was actually an updated resolution regarding criteria and process for if an individual or an organization wanted to name a facility or name a park or rename something. And so they put together, and they spent quite a bit of time talking about criteria and process. So from that point at that point, in 2018, the city had received an application based on the resolution, but we really didn't have a review process. At that point, the city put together an application, a review process that you reviewed. And so just to remind folks that the policy is that the city will take any application, we will review it for completeness to make sure that it has all the material and information that we need, that we will then bring it forward to the park board. You are the volunteer organization, the advisory board to the council that they selected to do that. Oftentimes, renaming has to do with a park or a facility or something. So they thought you'd be the appropriate group to review the process. And at the conclusion of the process, they would be looking for a recommendation from you, whatever that might be. And then we will take your recommendation, whether it's the night that you review it or if you needed more information and came back. But when you're ready to make a recommendation, it will then be forwarded to city council. And at that point, it would be up to them to decide the process that would follow, whether they would need information, additional information, have a public hearing, et cetera. So just to follow up with the information that you received in your packet, we did receive an application in 2016, or pardon me, 2018. Claudia Thomas, well-known city council member, passed away. And so the city received an application regarding naming a facility in her honor. And there is a criteria in the policy that says that if it's a naming after an individual that has passed, you need to wait 3 years before you would then implement that name change. And so the city at that time tabled that application. And every year or so, we would check back in and say, 2 years to go, 1 year to go, are you still interested? After 3 years, Mr. Boyd resubmitted his application and amended it. And so it went from the initial proposal, which was to rename a street in the city of Lakewood, to naming a facility, Fort Slocum Park. Mr. Boyd's here tonight. Part of the process is to hear from the applicant. He's going to share with you his proposal and information behind it. And then when he's finished, I'll follow up with my review of the completed application, and then you'll have a chance to do the public hearing and then have your own discussion. That's the process we'll use for tonight.
I'd like to call Mr. David Boyd to the podium.
Well, thank you for having me here. I'm David Boyd, and I want to make it clear I am not the son-in-law of Claudia Boyd, whose husband's name is David Boyd. I am a member, a citizen of Lakewood, and have been for 52 years. So I know the old days and I know the good days. I want to thank you for the opportunity, and I want to explain to you that when I first put the application in, I was unaware that it had to wait for 3 years. The other thing was I was under the impression that the area at Motor Street rather, was going to be a pedestrian area where people could walk around, sit and eat, sit and talk and relax. I didn't realize that it was still going to be an area where vehicles just continued to go through if they wanted to. At the same time, I had thought about Fort Slocum, but Fort Slocum belonged to the state. And you can't do anything unless you've gone through the legislature. So that was just unrealistic. Over the time, the 3 years passed, then the park was turned over to Lakewood. And at that point, it became eligible for someone in Lakewood to rename the park or propose to rename the park. And that's how it came about. At this point, I have read many comments that people have made over the past few days, and I expected that to be 99.9% no's. I don't think there was 1% yes. But at any rate, there was a group that said no to the renaming, but yes, that something needed to be done. Another part of the group said no, but they were satisfied with the fact that the school district had named the school after Claudia. And that said to me, you are saying that the city doesn't deserve to do anything. She was never on the school board, but they thought enough of her and what she did to recognize it. And I think that the city needs to do the same thing. There was a talk about, Fort Slocum has a lot of history. As far as I'm concerned, Fort Slocum has a poor history. It was brought here to push the Indians out of their good land and put them where they couldn't do the work they needed to do. They couldn't farm like they wanted to. They couldn't get to the quality of fish, and it broke out in a war. Well, the governor of the territory knew that was going to happen. So that's why the fort was established. When the fort was closed down, it became an insane asylum for many, many years before it became Western State Hospital. So I don't the connection of Fort Steilacoom to Lakewood, I don't really quite understand. It's the same connection should be to Steilacoom. Those people could say the same thing. Right now, the park belongs to Lakewood. Why shouldn't the park have a name connected to Lakewood? Maybe City of Lakewood Park, City of Lakewood Community Park, or Dr. Claudia B. Thomas Park, Dr. Claudia B. Thomas Lakewood Park. So there's a lot of options there. But I just wanted to let you know how this came about. And I want to read to the people who are listening in. One of the comments was, who was Claudia? So 7 people from the area in the name of City Council did a proclamation. Let me read part of that to you. So the people listening in will know who Claudia Thomas was. September 19, 1995, Claudia Thomas was elected Lakewood City Council and took office on October 11th and served for 16 years. On October the 12th, served as the Lakewood's first deputy mayor for 8 years. As mayor from January 2006 to 2007. Claudia, years of service marked by exemplary leadership and working constantly to improve the quality of life for citizens of Lakewood. Claudia Thomas was a strong advocate for youth and education, instrumental in appointing 2 youth advisors to the City Council, which today is now Lakewood Youth Council with 22 members. Claudia Thomas initiated the city's practice of dedicating 1% of its general fund for social and human services. Claudia Thomas created Lakewood's Promise, which is active today and focuses on helping children become successful adults. As a result of her work, the city was recognized nationally by America's Promise of one of the 100 best communities for young people in 2006, 2008, and again in 2010 and 2012. I won't read all the members of the associations that she was a part of, but that speaks to who she is and why she needs to be memorialized by the city and not just by Clover Park School District. Thank you.
Thank you for those additional comments, David. Mary's going to fill us in on some additional rest of the information from the report.
Thank you, Mr. Boyd. I cared about Claudia too. I thought she was a fine woman. I said I cared a lot about Claudia Thomas. She was an amazing woman and I was glad to have worked with her. In the resolution, they outlined several criteria to consider when considering a name or a rename of a facility. So I listed it all out in the staff report, but I'm just going to highlight a few of the things so that we can note that for the conversation and for the notes. So one of the things is that really when you're looking at a name change, that it needs to be done with some real thought, and it needs to be something that's lasting. And so it said to always be thinking about the past, the present, and the future when you're looking at a name change. So one of it is the name change worthy and enduring? Would it create a legacy? And of course, Claudia Thomas served on the council for over 15 years. She was first African-American mayor in the state of female mayor in the state of Washington. So she definitely was an excellent leader and a public servant. We knew that. Does the name reflect significance of a feature of the location? The name is a person. It's really not recognizing the park or the history or any of the elements in the park. So that wouldn't really be relevant. Does the name reflect the mission and the vision of the city listed out there? The council's goal, which is, Lakewood's a thriving urban city. But I then also listed, this year is our 25th anniversary, and the city selected building community as our theme. And it came from the youth council, which is apparent, which is really amazing, because the youth council, that was Claudia's theme, keeping unity in community. And so the youth council brought that up. And so we really thought that was amazing. One of the city founders, and then one of the newest city members, brought that up. And so that was our theme. And so I just wanted to note that that was the theme of Dr. Thomas's work, creating unity in community. The next thing would be, one of the criteria is, does this have broad public support? I think you've all read the emails and the polls and the minutes, and I believe that you were sent some additional information today that we received. And so I'm thankful that the people that provided comment were quite respectful. They definitely recognized her history in the city and her work as a city leader, and that they thought that she should be recognized, but there was not broad public support for this particular recognition of Fort Steilacoom Park. And I just wanted to reemphasize, as Mr. Boyd had said, is there was a lot of feedback on, well, she's already been named. They named a school after her, and that was definitely based on her history of education, her love of education, her work with students. And so, as Mr. Boyd said, this is really to take a look at her civic history, her history as a leader in a municipal government for the city of Lakewood. The name doesn't create any kind of a commercialization, in that we talked a little bit already about her history and her work and legacy in the city. It says that, when you're looking at a historic place, that you want to talk about the founders of the city or that historical area. And certainly Fort Steilacoom has a rich history from its early days of Native Americans hunted and gathered here, celebrated here 10,000 years ago and currently, and all of the different people in between. So it doesn't really align with the park's history so much, but she was a founder of the city of Lakewood, so we wanted to emphasize that. And then it just says also, when you think about renaming something, what was the original name for? Sometimes when you rename something, then you're taking away the history of what that current name was. And so Mr. Boyd had listed 3 potential sites in his application. And so I just listed out the history. We talked a little bit about that. And he actually provided details of Fort Steilacoom Park and the history of that site. And it was created Fort Steilacoom Park because of its name, Fort Steilacoom. And the county actually, when the county started working with the state to take over the property, I couldn't find an official council action regarding the name of it, but right after they took over the responsibility, there was a memo that said currently known as Fort Steilacoom Park, and it was by the county council. So I'm assuming that there was some kind of action taken when they started leasing the land from the state. The other 2 facilities that he did mention was Lakewood City Hall. This is called Lakewood City Hall. It was called Lakewood City Hall when it became the City Hall in 2001 when it was dedicated. And so that's the only name that it carries at this point. And then the other name was Motor Avenue, and that was the original request, was taking Motor Avenue and changing it to be Claudia Thomas Promenade, with the idea it'd be a plaza area. But Motor Ave is called Motor Ave because it used to be where all the trolley lines came. And then at one point the trolleys were motorized, and that's when they became known as Motor Ave. So that's a little history for your site. So those are basically all of the different main points of criteria that was in the resolution to consider. And so at this point, I believe the next process is to do your public hearing to gather any additional input. All of the input that we've shared with you, you've read. We're not going to read everything that you've got because you've gotten that. And then you can do the public hearing and then have a talk amongst yourselves. And I'll be happy to answer any questions or help you with anything you need at that point.
Thank you, Mary. Again, this is the public hearing for the request for Fort Steilacoom Park to be renamed Dr. Claudia B. Thomas Park. I'm just reminding folks that do want to participate with the public comment. 3 minutes, limited to the request for Fort Steilacoom Park to be renamed. Remind folks that the city has received a great deal of already emails and texts regarding this topic, and that will be included in the documentation for the records. Your input will be included in the review, so you need to, your message, however, if you're welcome to restate it or state it. Also, if there's a large number of people wanting to speak and someone has already said that, you can concur with the last speaker. So use that option. Again, the virtual testimony, like I had read earlier, is up on the board or on the screen. And that's available, and then I can start calling on folks that have signed up. And I don't have that list, so.
You have to say your name, where you live in Lakewood.
My name is Robin Ferguson. I live in Lakewood, Marsh. I've lived here since 1992. I have a question. Nobody has said what this will cost to rename the park. I would like to know how much this will cost to rename it, and you know, why we're spending this much money. So if somebody could please say how much it's going to cost to rename and notify Siri and everybody else about the renaming, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair, we see no one else with their hand raised to provide comments for the public hearing. Actually, it looks like Mr. James Dunlop will be next.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. My name is James Dunlop, and I'm a resident of Lakewood. I would like to comment on the proposal to rename Fort Steilacoom Park, whose proposed new name is the Dr. Claudia B. Thomas Park. Like many people in the city, I strongly oppose the proposal. While Dr. Thomas did many great things in her life, renaming Fort Steilacoom Park after her is inappropriate. Fort Steilacoom Park is part of Lakewood and state history. And yes, there are some negative connotations in the name, as Mr. Boyd pointed out, but history is complex. Fort Steilacoom Park is part of the story of Manifest Destiny and the expansion of the United States westwards. The fort in the name tells us that it was a military-backed expansion, and Fort Steilacoom was built as part of a war against the Native Americans who had inhabited this area for thousands of years. The name Steilacoom reminds us that before this westwards push, there was a Steilacoom tribe living here, numbering around 500, a tribe that was ravaged by smallpox and is now officially extinct. Most importantly, Fort Steilacoom has an association with the Nisqually tribe, and Chief Leschai, who was executed close to the park in 1858 and was finally exonerated in 2004. And there is a strong connection there. The name Fort Steilacoom is a link with the history of the region, and it is a memorial, however imperfect, to the injustices of the past. Reading people's comments on the subject in the Suburban Times, there seems a general view that history is important. We must never forget the region's links with the past, which is probably one reason why Washington State mandates the teaching of Pacific Northwest history in its public schools. Changing the name Fort Steilacoom Park to the Dr. Claudia B. Thomas Park would represent a contribution to the erasing of history, leaving us with yet another anonymous suburban park. Is that what we really want? To conclude, Fort Steilacoom Park should keep its name, and any future name changes should not happen without the approval of its traditional guardians, the Nisqually tribe. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
We don't have anyone else signed up to provide comments or have virtual hands raised.
Okay,
So if anyone else would like to provide virtual comments, please use the raise hand feature.
I'm calling 3 times for additional comments for this public hearing. I'm calling for additional comments for this public hearing. I'm calling for additional comments for this public hearing. I am going to close this public hearing for renaming of Claudia E. Thomas Park. At this time, I'd like to open discussion among the board members on next steps. So thoughts, ideas?
Well, after review of, you on there?
Not yet. It should turn red. There it is.
Oh, okay, it's pushing too much. After a review of all the public input, I personally am of the opinion that we should look for a different venue to honor Claudia's time and service here in our community. Not to belittle what she has done, she was a tremendous person. I have lived in Lakewood most of my life, long before it was a city, and feel it's appropriate to have something from the city honoring her. But I feel also that the park is an inappropriate place to do it based on the history of the park. Not acknowledging that everything in the park has been perfect, but we didn't rename Auschwitz to try and remove its stigma of the wrongdoings. I think there's lessons there to be learned in the history of Fort Steilacoom Park with its existing name.
I concur.
Any other comments? Just push.
I concur as well. I loved Claudia. I think we should honor her in a way. We've got numerous parks in the town, many of them with a name that was just made up, at the time, like Active Park. That name doesn't mean anything. The Fort Steilacoom name means something. It's got a history, and it's part of the history of our area. So I concur.
Any other comments?
I concur with the other board members.
Is there, with all due respect, Claudia Thomas did great things for the city of Lakewood. And I agree with the comments that the board has presented that we should recognize her. Is there a thought on, like Sylvia, you mentioned renaming Active Park? Is there other venues or parks that could be renamed for Claudia B. Thomas?
I think it's worth looking at all the parks. I mean, I don't know which ones have a solid history like Fort Steilacoom, but I think that's worth the effort.
Okay. There was mention earlier about renaming City Hall or something like this for Claudia B. Thomas. Is that out of line, or would it be better to stay within the park system, giving recognition to parks?
I don't know if that's within our purview to consider things outside of parks. It looks like it is, in which case I think the city hall should be at least considered. It was mentioned in the original application. I think it should be considered along with other potential things like parks as well.
Okay, any other comments?
That might be something to send back to the applicant to consider what they feel is also most appropriate.
Can I have a motion or some direction that we could vote on tonight to help with this? Is it a recommendation? Is it a general sense of where we're going with this? I have a sense from listening to everybody that we're not altogether on exactly where. We know we want to recognize Claudia B. Thomas for what she's done, but it's wide open.
Well, I think we need to send recommendation to the council that they not rename Steilacoom Park for Claudia Thomas and that they find a different venue to bear her name. And so I would so move that for the Parks Board.
I
Two.
agree.
Okay. Any open discussion on that? Okay, all in favor? Okay, Mary, help us.
Possibility of hearing from the applicant regarding a name such as City Hall, and he said he'd be happy to share a thought on that, if you're interested in learning that as you're developing your recommendation.
Sure.
Is that appropriate to do right now?
Thank you.
Thank you. I don't have very much to say about it, other than the fact that I thought about City Hall because it was a gathering place. It's where people come, and that's what Claudia was about, people gathering and an open air for everyone. And this City Hall is that way, and I just thought maybe that was another that we could name it City Hall if the Stilichon Park Lake, Stilichon Park wasn't the accepted name change. And I know it's not, but I would like you to consider the City Hall.
Thank you. Do I have a modification on that amendment? Or-
Well, I might ask Mary at this point in time, if we propose naming City Hall after Claudia Thomas, do we then need to have more public comment, which I suspect we do?
Well, it wouldn't be the Parks and Recreation's responsibility to name it after City Hall, right? It'd have to be
Yeah.
the City Council.
City Council has selected you as the City Advisory Board to deal with naming and renaming of all city facilities, not just Parks and Recreation. So they would consider your application. I would also say that in the original application, he did note 3 potential sites. And so that was in the application. I think people did reference that, those people that reviewed the application. If you made a recommendation that included other things besides just talking about Fort Stilichon Park, it would be forwarded to the City Council. The City Council would then determine what the next steps are. They may ask for more public input. They may want some additional information, or that, so they would get to make that decision. But they have given you as a board the ability to review and make recommendations to them on all naming and renaming of city facilities, not just park facilities.
Right, so then I would like to amend my proposal that we recommend to the city fathers that instead of Fort Stilichon Park, they name this facility after Claudia Thomas.
I would second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Mike,
Abstain.
abstain. I'll say aye. So majority has it. So we're going to make a recommendation that Claudia B. Thomas, City Hall will be named Claudia B. Thomas. It's a recommendation to City Council. Good. That concludes the public hearing portion of our board meeting. We will continue with our standard board meeting, and the director's report is next.
Yeah. Okay, good evening. Hi, everybody. Good job on your first public hearing. Did a great job. Thank you, Vito, for taking over. You did a wonderful job. So our director's report, I put a copy on the table for you, and I've given a copy to Nikki, so she'll have it in the file as well. So just to go over, it's been a busy summer. We've gotten a lot of projects completed. And so the top of our director's report always has that list of sort of our running projects. And we probably should take a few off and add a few more, because it seems like they're always coming and going. But just to let you know, a quick update for Springbrook Park. We looked at that. Remember, we reduced the size of the dog park, and we actually, during the final design, we actually kind of moved the pump track so it was a little less tucked up in the back corner against the fence. That was kind of a crime prevention through environmental design conversation. And so it's still there. It's just moved out more to this sort of the centrally located area. that keeps the sort of flow of the loop system. So I think it's going to be a good choice. We're in permitting right now, and based on construction and costs and things, we're going to bid it at the end of the year with the idea of starting the first part of December. We're not doing a lot of earth removal, and so we feel like it'll be a project that we can get completed by summer. We certainly don't want that site to be restricted in any way by summer. So that's our plan for that. The gateways are done, except for they do need landscaping, and WashDOT is doing that. They are going to wait till the fall, of course. We didn't want to do it in the middle of the hot summer. And they had some electrical poles in the middle of the sites that they were using during construction for lighting the area. So once all that got pulled out, they'll be doing that landscaping, and then we'll be responsible for maintaining those gateways up there by Berkeley and Woodbrook Industrial Park. The Chambers Creek Trail, we're working on bridge number 1 that connects Phillips Road to Kobayashi Park, and one day maybe the South Sound Wildlife Area. But so there was a little delay in the bridge is built, but they're having supply order with the decking. They had some material problems getting the material. So my understanding is it's going to be starting to be installed like October 15th-ish. So the goal is to get that piece done. And we are moving forward with final design for trail number 2, looking for additional resources. Council will be considering some additional resources for that to cover our third of that project cost. And so that project would be starting next year, end of next year, because there's additional permitting that would need to be done because you're down in the canyon. Harry Todd's done. Yay. We did a grand opening during National Night Out. And Angle Lane's been done, the restroom and the plaza. We're really now working on the trailheads. We have kiosks that'll be at each trailhead, one up by the plaza and one down by the end of Angle Lane and Elwood. And the cool thing is that is really a great project that we're working on with the Nisquallies, trying to working with one group from the Nisqually tribe that'll be doing benches and seating areas with the idea they'd be engraving some tribal words and history or symbols in the benches with their artists. And so that'll be fun to help provide some education. We have a trail map that will be at both ends, and we have created the Nisqually Loop Trail that basically connects Angle Lane up to where the plaza area is and around the lake. So it's we're calling it the Nisqually Loop Trail, with the idea of adding interpretive things along the way as we learn more and work with our partners there. And then also on the trailhead up by the plaza area, which has not been named, we will be putting in an acknowledgement and some artwork that talks about the history of the name of the Nisqually tribe and who they are as a people, and some photos. So we're working with their archive people. So that's another exciting project, working with the Nisqually tribe. We feel like that park has so much history. You know, when we did the Discovery Trail in 2010, we actually highlighted an area at the end of Elwood and Angle Lane to do some interpretive storytelling about Chief Leschi. And we really want the tribe to tell us what that story is. It's not our story to tell. And so we're working with them to on whatever that might be. So we're real excited about some of these new opportunities working with the Nisqually tribe and in the recognition of the park, because there is a lot of history there as well. Edgewater Park, you'll see in my report down here, we did remove some trees from Edgewater Park. It created quite a little bit of conversation with some folks. But that was when we did that big forestry review in 2019, 18, 19, we looked at trees from throughout the city. I think there were, how many did I say in here? Like 1,500 plus trees all throughout a park system. And several were identified as dangerous. And so, and then others were, prune them, fix them. So we've been working on that. But there were quite a few trees in Edgewater Park that have met their life cycle. One was hit by lightning. Some poplars. And so we got another arborist out there, second opinion, actually third opinion, and they assessed the 13 trees and came up with 7 that needed to be removed. And then an 8th came apparent based on some accidents that occurred in that area. So that everybody was notified and those trees were removed, but we had to get a permit, then we had to get a special shoreline permit. We had to do special work not to, do any damage to the shoreline. So it's always sad when you have to see a tree go, but as a public space, we have to make sure that they're safe. So we're continuing. We just did that work last week. And then let's see, what else do we have coming up here? We are getting ready to move forward with Wards Lake and American Lake. We have grant money to do that. So we'll be looking at some RFQs to get consultants to help us put those plans together, and we'll be moving forward with that. I think it happened during the summer, so I'm not sure if we talked about it yet, and I might have contacted you, but we had applied for the Land and Water Conservation Fund, and we received $500,000 from the state. We'd also applied for a National Land and Water Conservation Fund grant. They basically take 2 or 3 from each state and send it to the National Park Service. And we were awarded $1 million. So we don't get the 500,000, but we get $1 million. So that's a better deal. So that's great because it helps us do a little bit more in the park and it takes away some of the impact to our general fund. So again, we'll be working more on those and we'll be, coming to you throughout the next year or so with those plans and those projects. Of course, our farmers market was a great success and that ended at the end of last week, our final market, and had a really great season. And we just have a great group of vendors that we've been working with for years and years. They're a tight-knit group, very dedicated to the city of Lakewood. It's funny because some people were telling me that when they go to, we give our vendor lists to DuPont and Stillicum. The prices are different in other cities. Our vendors are really conscious of creating the right price point here in Lakewood to support our citizens and those folks that they believe what they want to support. And so it started when we were here at City Hall and that's continued at Fort Stillicum. So they're really dedicated to our community. We're really thankful for them. And then many of you were able to come out to the 25th anniversary event. We had to postpone it for a week. Too much rain and snow and wind and hail. And we had a glorious day last Saturday. And just lots and lots of folks came out. It was laid out in such a way people could really enjoy the event, but stay distant. And it was just a good time was had by all. The mayor made a speech that really talked about the history of the city from incorporation until today. And I have to say, the way I believe the reason the city is the way that it is because of the citizens that really stepped up, the citizens who continue to step up, such as yourselves, and the volunteers and the collaborations and the partnerships. I mean, it's very unique. You don't see, there's a few here and there, but the city of Lakewood is just made of partnerships and collaborations, and it really has made it a great city to live and visit and work and play. So that's pretty much my report. If you turn your paper over, you can see we have upcoming topics. So next month, the city manager will be here doing a state of the city report. Alan, you were on board to do an update on the South Sound wildlife area. You want to do an update on what you're working on? If that works for you, we can, adjust it, but
Absolutely. We have a public work party Saturday there. I'll put a plug in right now.
Okay, good. That sounds good.
9 to 1.
Yes, and we're doing some work with Fort Stillicum Park. We should have an update on that. And then we also the city's doing a bunch of work on tree preservation and a tree canopy. And we are going to be bringing that to you in October, maybe November. So public or community development is working on that, and they've agreed to come and share that with us once it's ready for I think it just went to council, and they're going to be continuing to do some work on that. So. And then Truck and Tractor Day is coming up October 9th. So that's a big fun day in Lakewood. Bring your kids out. They get to, throw pumpkins and eat some fun food and touch and learn and see, fire trucks and dump trucks and military vehicles. And it's just a really fun day out there, and that's free. And then we're going to be doing our tree lighting virtually again this year, where the city council will light it at the first meeting in December. And then we're going to be doing we got that. I make mistakes all the time. I thought she was correcting me. So we're going to be doing a drive-through parade, and how last year we did the reverse parade and we did it here, and it was fantastic for the 1,000 people that came through, and we had to extend it over an hour because there were so many people, but there were so many people that didn't get through. It was really a challenge traffic-wise to get in and out of the town center and get around. And then they put you on the Disneyland route where you think you're almost to the front and then you're back on the end. So we're actually going to do it at Fort Stillicum Park. Oh. And so we figured out, first of all, we can get people in the park and route them so that you're not interfering with too much traffic. We have large staging areas. And so we're looking right now at how that might be set up, whether we have people drive around the lake and then maybe up the road. So we're not quite sure where everybody's going to be, but we have miles of area that we can stage people before they go in so that it does take some of the pressure off the roads and give more people an opportunity to participate. So anyway, that's what we're working on. More to come.
Very good, Mary. Thank you. Is there any board member comments this time? No comments. The 25-year anniversary was good, Mary. It was very entertaining. Kind of saw it from a distance, but it was good. And I think there was a few other folks there maybe attending. Anyway, thank you. Next board meeting, regular meeting on Tuesday, October 26th. And I guess it's going to be a Zoom meeting, not in person. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
A motion.
Fred? Second. Thank you. Meeting is closed.
So we are going to be Zoom next time, huh?
That's what it says.